both the Pokemon as part of the Psychic combo as well as against Tyranitar.
All right, well, here we go. Game 1 of our first set of the day. We're going to see that Whimsicott on the field for Michael alongside the Hearthflame Ogerpon. And like you called out, the single strike Urshifu immediately on the field for Kendall alongside the Tornadus. So immediately threatening Tailwind pressure for both players. Of course, Michael's Whimsicott also carries the Tailwind option. Also additionally carries the Charm, which would normally be pretty good, but the Dark-type Urshifu will block it, and the Wicked Blow doesn't really care about that.
Yeah, it's literally the worst possible matchup for Charm, where, however, I think the Moonblast is a lot scarier, right?
Yeah.
Whimsicott, not the most offensively gifted Pokemon we've ever seen, but certainly with both the same type of attack bonus and double weakness, I think Moonblast would be pretty devastating, enough so that it'd be pretty tough not to Terrastallize here, although I guess there is the Focus Sash.
All right, well, actually, the Terastallization will first off come from the Hearthflame Ogerpon, removing the grass typing, so removing the flying type weakness from that Pokemon, as well as getting an important boost to the physical attack, and again, boosting the power of Ivy Cudgel as well. Like you called out, Kendall is also forced to Terrastallize, so both of these players are hitting the gas immediately turn 1. Dark Terra typing on the Urshifu for Kendall, Fire Terra typing for the Ogerpon for Michael, and there's a first Tailwind going up for Kendall. That's Tailwind for the Urshifu and the Tornadus, and no matched Tailwind on Michael's side. Just a big Wicked Blow into the Ogerpon, picks up the one-hit KO with the Terra typing. The Terra boost will make sure that that Ogerpon goes down immediately, and that is the Terra wasted for Michael. Whimsicott gets the fire back of Moonblast and break the Focus Sash of the Urshifu, but that is still a Pokemon trade for Kendall and the Tailwind.
Yeah, some true Tailwind gameplay there with Bloodshot slugging out in the first turn. But yeah, much better trade there for Kendall. However, we do see the Pokemon that Michael has brought in the back, and perhaps not the most concerned about the Tailwind, although one key element to this is the Indeedee does not know Trick Room. It's not quite the version of his team that we're used to seeing. Michael's got a bunch of interesting looks and a little different variation of this than we usually see. Perhaps not quite as strong here, and Iron Crown's going to have to come in and see if it can get some work done here without its friend Indeedee, at least for now.
Yeah, Iron Crown is in a pretty good position if Michael can get that Urshifu off the field. Without the Dark typing, I don't see many options for Kendall to sort of withstand the power of an expanding Force Assault. But unfortunately, Michael has not gotten that Pokemon off the field just yet, so Kendall's going to have to play really carefully to preserve the Urshifu.
Yeah, and not only has Michael wasted his Terastallization already, but yeah, it's kind of awkward where he needs to spend his turn getting that Tailwind up probably in order to match speed, which is going to force him to lose even more resources here potentially. Could lose another Pokemon very easily on this turn facing down an Urshifu.
Oh, actually just sort of bluffing the Iron Crown, actually wasting the booster energy there, and dodges the Sucker Punch because of it, bringing the Indeedee on the field. So Michael now has staggered the Tailwind just a little bit here, while Kendall lands the Bleak Wind Storm and picks up a one-hit KO on the Whimsicott. No Terastallization available for that Pokemon, so Whimsicott just goes down, gets the Tailwind up, dodges the Sucker Punch, and now Michael is going to have to make as much use of these turns of Tailwind as possible.
Well, the good news is there won't be any more Sucker Punches with the Psychic Terrain on the field, but that's a lot of resources spent. And, normally in a situation like, I can just Expanding Force and pick up the easy knockout and weaken the other Pokemon, except that's a Dark-type Pokemon, so it's not going to work.
Well, Michael has been able to stagger Tailwind, so if Tornadus goes down, Michael will have one turn of speed advantage for his Pokemon. It looks like Kendall's just going to switch the Tornadus out, trying to preserve his Tailwind setter so that Kendall may be able to get the speed advantage again in the future. Actually going to be the Flutter Mane coming out, kind of a dangerous switch into the Steel-type Iron Crown. You see the booster speed will mean that that Flutter Mane is the fastest thing on the field because Michael's Iron Crown has already used up its booster energy. The Detect from the Urshifu means that this Tachyon Cutter does nothing into it, and the Dazzling Gleam just going to deal a little bit of chip damage to that Flutter Mane that Kendall is extremely happy about. That did no damage.
Yeah, nice little reposition there where, again, it does get us closer to the point where Michael's going to have the speed advantage, but 20 is now in the back, able to come out later if needed, and Urshifu is pretty pinned there, right? So at least now there's a trade-off where Fluttermane likely to be the quickest Pokemon on the field because of how the booster energies have interacted so far in this match, and indeed he forced to use Follow Me this time.
And this Fluttermane threatening an Icy Wind to drop the speed will actually miss the Iron Crown, though. Only the Indeedee is going to take the speed drop from this Icy Wind, which means that Iron Crown will still be faster than the Urshifu. Targets down the Fluttermane. That Dazzling Gleam actually making all of the difference, allowing the Tachyon Cutter to pick up the KO on that Fluttermane. So no more threat of Icy Wind. That does mean that this Urshifu gets to fire off a Wicked Blow into the Indeedee. No Terrassalization available for Michael to protect that Pokemon, so Indeedee goes down. But Michael was able to dodge the Icy Wind, so still has a speed advantage against this Urshifu for at least the final turn of Tailwind coming up.
Yeah. I mean, the speed advantage against whatever's in the back.
And
Urshifu going down there, knocked out by the Rocky Helmet. No way to avoid that after being sashed. Follow Me going to force it into attack into that Rocky Helmet. And as the Tailwind Peters there, Michael's in a tough spot, but now with that Dark-type Pokemon removed, potentially able to try to close this game out with an Expanding Force. And Glamora's not going to like this type matchup at all.
Yeah, this is a bad matchup for Glamora. Does have the option to protect with Spiky Shield here to stall out the final turn of Tailwind for Michael, while Kendall has the opportunity to set up a Tailwind of its own. But here's the thing, Michael is showing Calm Mind on Iron Crown, so if Kendall goes for a passive play, could just open up to allowing this Iron Crown to just get a boost in.
Yeah, I mean, you almost have to, it's hard not to give up the free Calm Mind, right? I mean, it's so easy just to lose the turn or lose the game immediately if you're Kendall here. So a smart play on Michael's end to try to take advantage of this. We do see the Spiky Shield, and a nice little play to get the most out of his turn, since Turnit's not the most offensively threatening Pokemon in the world.
Yeah, there's the Spiky Shield, the Calm Mind from the Iron Crown. So Iron Crown will get a boost to the special attack and crucially special defense, while Kendall just goes for a little bit of chip damage with that Bleakwind Storm. Going to have the Tailwind Peter out now for Michael, and now Kendall has the opportunity to set Tailwind of his own if he needs it to outspeed the Iron Crown, or just go on the offensive and keep trying to deal as much damage as possible.
I mean, after that Calm Mind, I mean, you gotta assume an Expanding Force is gonna be awfully devastating here. I'd be curious to see if they get a double knockout. With the Tailwind, though, Glamora's probably gonna get the chance to attack first.
Glamora gets to attack first and goes for an Earth Power, but with that special defense boost, is it enough? Not even close. Special defense boost on the Calm Mind and no Meteor Beam used for Glamora means that's gonna be a double KO from the Expanding Force. Huge damage, and Michael picks up game one. Looked like he was on the back foot from the start after losing his Ogerpon immediately, but clever usage of the Tailwind terms and finding the opportunities on that Iron Crown pulled it right back.
Yeah, pretty fun too, right? Where we see a lot of the Indeedee Iron Crown combination, but usually doesn't look anything like this.
Yeah.
Really fun look where it's a little bit different than I think what trainers are used to dealing with. And yeah, despite kind of losing the Frokemon first, despite losing the speed control first, had the right Pokemon in the back. Iron Crown with that Calm Mind up, facing down not only two Pokemon it could just dunk immediately, but also that were reliant entirely on special attacks. So if it needed to, it probably could have survived another turn.
Yeah, and this looked awful for Michael at the start, immediately losing both his Terrassalization and a Pokemon to that Wicked Blow. But most importantly, Michael was able to bring Urshifu down to the Focus Sash with that Moonblast. And the Dark-type Urshifu being the only resistance to the Expanding Force in the future meant that all Michael needed to do was get that Pokemon off the field, and the combination of Moonblast and Rocky Helmet was more than enough to do so. Iron Crown also being able to dodge this Icy Wind to make sure that it remained very speedy in the future turns. But most importantly, the chip damage on the Dazzling Gleam on the Fluttermane. I made fun of it to begin with, but it really made the difference to get that Fluttermane off the field. And then this Rocky Helmet, the Follow Me, forcing the Urshifu to attack into the Indeedee and knock itself out.
Yeah, I really like the efficiency in Michael's game there, where it really was just the Fluttermane and the Urshifu that were serious threats to the sweep, and just exactly enough damage to both of them. Basically no unnecessary damage on either knockout. It was a really nice way to play his resources, and I think that's going to be tricky for Kendall as we move into this second game, right? Where how do you avoid this, where you end up in a situation where Iron Crown can just sweep? It really seems like it's only those two Pokemon who are going to be a super significant threat. you have the option of maybe bringing the Entei with the Assault Vest or the Wellspring Ogerpon and terrestrializing that, I guess. Although I think the terrestrialization on Urshifu was necessary to pick up that big knockout early in the game, which I guess could also have been bait a little bit too, right? Where you get the knockout, but you lose the game. So I don't think Ogerpon was the biggest threat on Michael's side of the field.
Yeah, there are a couple other options, the Steel Terra typing on Tornadus or the Grass on Glamora to at least remove the weakness to the Psychic type expanding force. But yeah, the Entei is Assault Vest and also carries Snarl, which is usually how you deal with these expanding force teams, an Assault Vest Pokemon with Snarl. But here we are, it's just going to be the Whimsicott and Ogerpon up against the Dark type Single Strike Urshifu and the Tornadus again for both of these players. Kendall needs to preserve this Urshifu, cannot let it go down like he did in game 1. But here we go, it's just sort of a repeat so far. Michael going on the offensive, immediately terrestrializing that Ogerpon, threatening huge damage. That's the thing. You know, if Kendall ignores this Pokemon, it will pick up KOs of its own.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful element of Michael's team where there's so many big threats, it's hard to ignore all of them. And this is a really tricky turn, right? You know, will either side go for Tailwind? If you just try to go on the offense to protect Urshifu, you know, a Tailwind and an Ogerpon attack is going to be a knockout in the Tornadus as well. We just see a terrestrialization, so likely both sides are going to trade blows here.
Yeah, it looks like a repeat of game 1 entirely so far. Wicked Blow, if that connects into the Hearthflame Ogerpon, yep, there it goes. We already know how this ends. Ooh!
Or do we?
It turns out that was just a roll. Urshifu actually not able to pick up the one-hit KO on the Hearthflame Ogerpon this time around. Will, however, still take the Moonblast from Whimsicott, but now Ogerpon is still on the field. That is a huge IV Cudgel with the Embody Aspect boost, with the Terrestrialization boost, picks up a one-hit KO on the Tornadus.
Oh, that's huge. I mean, we saw last game, even with the disadvantage Michael doing so well this time, Kendall's in a pretty tough spot. Already lost a Pokemon, nearly another. Yeah, I mean, at least Fluttermane gets out in the field safely this time, but it's got a long way to go just to get back to where it was last game, which was already a losing position.
Well, yeah, the Fluttermane on the field with the booster energy is the fastest thing on the field, even after a potential Tailwind here, but now you can also see that Michael has completely changed the end game for his team. Has the Tyranitar and the Como and baited the Entei from Kendall.
So smart.
Kendall has brought the Entei hoping to catch the Iron Crown in Indeedee mode and now sees the Tyranitar and has to know that, oh no, this is not what I expected.
Yeah, this is really tough. Not only will Michael eventually wind up with the Tailwind advantage again, but Tyranitar, a huge problem for these Pokemon. Not going to take too much damage from this Dazzling Gleam, although quite a bit there. Still, it's somewhat super effective.
It was super effective.
And the sand matters here too, right? Where, you know, we saw how little HP that Urshifu has in the back. Unless Kendall's somehow able to survive long enough, these two Pokemon, that sand expires before Urshifu comes out in the field, it's only going to have one turn left. And that's going to be tough with Entei facing down a Pokemon known for using its powerful rock-type attacks.
Yeah, we know that Michael is wearing his Tyranitar pin to make sure that Rock Slide's always hit, but Stone Edge, the more powerful attack, also has a higher chance of missing. May not even need to use the Como in the back, but obviously knowing that the Como is in the back, that Fluttermane is now enemy number 1, and Whimsicott with the ability to charm Entei means that this Pokemon will not be doing much damage whatsoever. Moonblast actually connecting onto the Tyranitar with a critical hit.
Ooh, that crit could matter. How much is this going to do after the charm?
Tantrum. Oh, picks up the KO on Tyranitar. The critical hit through the Sandstorm deals massive damage, and even with the charm, Entei able to pick up that KO, and now that does mean that the Como does have to come out on the field potentially in front of the Fluttermane.
Yeah, this is suddenly not looking so good for Michael. I really like the way he played this game, but now, yeah, he's two Pokemon that are in a tough spot, right? Ogerpon certainly not excited about being out in the field with this sand and against
also
this
only has
Fluttermane. Yeah, but you see what Michael's going for here, right? Where he needs to get a situation where the Tailwind expires on Kendall's side of the field so that Como doesn't just immediately get defeated by this Fluttermane.
Yeah, now the Ogerpon and Whimsicott out on the field. This is looking more difficult for Michael. Can't even safely go for any kind of follow me. The charm not going to be enough because you have to make something happen with this one turn that Ogerpon's out on the field.
Yeah, I just don't know what you do from here, right? Where the speed control is so against him now. He can't protect with Whimsicott, so it may go down as well. And even though that's not maybe super impactful in this match, with needing to set up the Como and try to sweep here, losing Charm as a support tool would be pretty devastating as well.
All right, Ogerpon's just going to protect with the spiky shield as Flutterman goes for the Dazzling Gleam, safely deal damage to both of these Pokemon. Ogerpon, of course, being behind the spiky shield. Whimsicott going down to 8 hit points, goes for a Moonblast, doesn't get a special attack drop, and there's the Sacred Fire connecting on Whimsicott. That Pokemon will go down. And it looks like Michael did the calculations and thinks he has one more turn after the Sandstorm by going for that spiky shield. We'll have to see as the sand buffets all of these Pokemon. Ogerpon with 1 hit point remaining.
Trained with Trust and Love there, and we do see the Tailwind expire on the other side of the field, so there's elements of an advantage here for Michael, right? Only 1 turn left for this Ogerpon, and with Como out in the field, now what do you do, right? Well, you really can't just let yourself get hit by Fairy-type attacks, so now you kind of have to attack into that Fluttermane spot, and Kendall's going to know that too. So the one big positive here, that Entei is still Charmed, so not going to be the most threatening, but you really don't want to take a burn on this Como either. Tough spot.
Yeah, extremely tough spot, and especially there is nothing preventing Kendall from just protecting out this turn, letting that Ogerpon go down to sand and letting the Tailwind peter out, which will then allow Fluttermane to be the fastest thing on the field and immediately threatening that Como. There is no terrestrialization available for Michael. Ogerpon's actually just going to go down to the extreme speed. Kendall is not risking anything. Picks up the KO onto Ogerpon. Fluttermane is protected, so once Tailwind goes down for Michael, it'll just be an easy Moonblast into that Pokemon for Kendall to force a Game 3.
Yeah, not much you can do now. I really like Michael's adjustment in this game, but it just didn't quite work out, in large part perhaps because of that critical hit.
Yeah, the critical hit on the Moonblast, bringing that Tyranitar down just enough. Both the critical hit and, we did see that Michael had locked into Stone Edge, so actually there were a lot of ways that could have gone wrong for Michael. Stone Edge, of course, not 100% accurate at all. There's the Moonblast picking up the KO onto Como. Como goes down, and Kendall now forcing Game 3.
It really well played game, and I think that he won with that particular matchup between Pokemon. Bodes very well for him in this third game. I really thought that what Michael did to kind of condition Kendall into picking those Pokemon was super clever, right? Where he won the first game using that Iron Crown, so kind of knows his opponent's going to have to adjust to not lose the same way. And then he adapted to that by bringing Tyranitar in particular, who really could have taken advantage of those Pokemon. But the speed didn't work out that way, right? Tyranitar tried to take some damage switching into the battle, and then just wasn't able to actually use that type advantage before it was knocked out.
And this looked disastrous from turn 1 when the Wicked Blow didn't pick up the 1-hit KO on the Ogerpon this time around, and instead Michael was able to fire back with a 1-hit KO of his own onto the Tornadus, meaning that Kendall would be ceding Tailwind control for the rest of the game. Maybe Kendall getting a little bit overconfident after getting the roll on Game 1.
Yeah, and even without it, though, I mean, I think Ogerpon surviving is sort of a big deal in this match, even though we're not going to see it really do anything for the rest of his run. At least it gave Michael some chance to get Como out in the field, but that Fluttermane wound up being pretty impactful in this matchup, helping pick up this knockout with a little bit of help from Entei, and yeah, it just was a present. It was just present on the field, threatening these Pokemon, slowly dealing its damage, and there wasn't really anything Michael was able to do to threaten it the other direction.
Yeah, Fluttermane being able to get a Dazzling Gleam on the Tyranitar and a Moonblast forced that critical hit, getting the extra damage that Kendall needed to be able to pick up the KO with Stomping Tantrum after a Charm. Made the big difference here for Michael and Kendall.
Yeah, shout out to Entei, though. Definitely role-playing as that person you hate having on your team in multiplayer games. Picking up 3 knockouts with a grand total of, I believe, 39 damage. I guess they asked how many and not how.
Exactly. All that matters is the statistics, not total damage dealt.
Yeah, although once again, right, I was kind of commenting how much I liked that from Michael in Game 1. I think it was kind of like did just enough damage every time. I think at this level, it's just so important to know your calcs, not to waste any attacks unnecessarily. And that was a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see now this third game where I think on Kendall's side of the field, he's probably found the correct combination of Pokemon. Maybe make a little adjustment here or there, but I thought things looked a lot better with Entei there, especially because we did see the extreme speed, which didn't really matter picking up that knockout, but I think having that option is a big deal. It's another way to deal potentially that final bit of damage, and it's kind of good either way, right? If Michael picks the same Pokemon he did in that game, extreme speed still threatening. If Indeedee were to come back and turn off the option of using that extreme speed, well, you still want to snarl into that anyway. So Entei's kind of happy no matter what. I was a little surprised not to see it in game one. I thought that was a great adjustment.
Yeah, I understand the reason you bring Glamora when you're facing down the Iron Defense combo. You want as much special attack as possible. But, here we see a big change here from Michael, not leading the Whimsicott and Ogerpon, instead going immediately for the Psychic Terrain and the Expanding Force mode. Iron Crown has the booster energy, so boosting its speed to be the fastest thing on the field. Although Kendall does have the option to go for a Tailwind and boost the speed of his own Urshifu. And, we've already seen that this Indeedee carrying the Rocky Helmet and Follow Me will go down to a Wicked Blow if it's not able to Terrastallize, but does have the ability now, this time, for the first time, it's not going to be the Hearthflame Ogerpon Terrastallizing turn one. Can actually defend itself against this Urshifu pretty well.
Yeah, I wonder what Michael's expecting. We're kind of seeing him take some time to figure out this turn. With his opponent leading the same leads as he did the previous two games, I would have thought this is what he was expecting. So perhaps he thought there was going to be a mix-up here.
Well, here comes the Entei. Just like you said, Entei being a crucial Pokemon for this matchup. Urshifu realizing that going with the Psychic Terrain mode with the Expanding Force needs to preserve the Dark-type immunity to the Psychic-type Expanding Force, and it's actually going to be the Steel-typing on the Tornadus, which is going to be able to resist both the Expanding Force and the Tachyon Cutter coming out from Iron Crown, and leaves this Tornadus as an extremely obnoxious Pokemon to get off the field for Michael. But here we see the Terrastallization into the Fairy typing. Michael able to protect against the Dark type Urshifu. Goes for the Follow Me just to protect the Iron Crown while trying to sneak in as many boosts as possible. Iron Crown taking a moment out of its day to meditate, to breathe, to get focused and boost its special attack and its special defense as Entei switches in, and Tornadus's Bleakwind Storm going to miss the Indeedee and do a pittance to Iron Crown, trying to fish for some of those speed drops.
Yeah, I guess this Tornadus is probably going to have to try to get centered here, not able to land one of those attacks, and at least you wind up in a situation now where the Follow Me no longer matters, but a great play on Kendall's side, doesn't get baited by the Terrastallization Follow Me combination. Even though Urshifu wouldn't have been attacked that turn, losing your Focus Sash just to attack into a resisted Indeedee wouldn't have been a great value there, and Entei getting on the field for free also makes this matchup quite a bit easier.
Yeah, Entei on the field for free, threatening the Iron Crown with a big Sacred Fire immediately. Again, Kendall still has preserved the opportunity to go for Tailwind whenever he wants to by protecting the Tornadus with that Terra typing. Will go for the Tailwind on turn 2. So now Entei is the fastest thing on the field. Goes for the Snarl, like we were saying. This is one of the ways a lot of players like to defend against the Psychic Terrain Expanding Force type teams. Get an Assault Vest Pokemon and start snarling to bring down the damage.
Yeah, now we see another Pokemon that can use the Follow Me, a little different variation of Ogerpon than we normally see, but I don't know that the Pokemon on the other side are all that affected by that. Likely both to want to use spread attacks anyway. Ogerpon's in a tough spot here because it can't Terrastallize to drop its Grass type, but I don't know how effective this is going to be.
Yeah, Bleakwind Storm from Tornadus, though, will avoid, misses the Ogerpon, and again, another pittance onto Iron Crown. Ogerpon dodging big damage from that Bleakwind Storm. Iron Crown finally gets a speed drop from the Bleakwind Storm and takes a Snarl, so now at neutral special attack to fire off this Expanding Force. Tornadus will resist, and Entei showing the power of Assault Vest, taking less than a third.
Still, though, man, I think it really shows the power of Expanding Force that despite everything that's happened, that's still pretty good damage. I think the trouble now is that you're likely not going to be able to use it again without getting snarled, and that really is going to start reducing the damage here. However, Michael not in such a bad spot compared to what he could be. Ogerpon suddenly much, much healthier, although, again, it's not really doing anything on the field here, right? I don't know that it being healthy is really helping Michael at least currently move toward an endgame, but it does theoretically have a type advantage. Maybe just try to knock out the Tornadus and dodge one more attack.
Yeah, dodge one more Bleakwind Storm, and you can fire off an Ivy Cudgel into the Steel-type Tornadus. Iron Crown protected, Ogerpon not able to dodge a second Bleakwind Storm, and instead, because it does not have access to the Terastallization, goes down to that Bleakwind Storm.
Entei, just reminding Iron Crown that it's there.
I'm here, you have to protect against this.
Yeah, and it's sort of interesting too. Goes for that Sacred Fire, perhaps deciding, all right, I've snarled enough. It's time to try to pick up the knockout now. And Edie going to perhaps come back on the field, try to make that a little more difficult, at least forcing Entei into snarling again, perhaps. These Pokemon are both going to struggle to actually deal damage to Indeedee, but Iron Crown, if it's getting snarled every turn, is going to struggle to deal damage as well. So perhaps both sides will trade blows a little bit here.
You have to imagine there are some guessing games going on here. Kendall can always go for the Sacred Fire into Iron Crown and just pick up the KO, but if you expect Indeedee to be follow-meing, then you just go ahead and click Snarl, at which point, to make sure you keep having enough damage to continue threatening, maybe you just go for the Helping Hand instead.
Yeah, Michael's got to make something happen here. He's in a bit of a hole, so see the Bleakwind Storm coming out, but it's Entei's move that'll be the interesting one here.
Yep, Iron Crown keeps getting hit by all of these Bleakwind Storms, and Entei goes for the Sacred Fire. Kendall calls the bluff, picks up the KO with that Sacred Fire. Indeedee just left clapping for its partner who has gone down. And this Entei and this Tornadus are ripping through Michael's team, and Whimsicott just doesn't have the offense to make anything happen here.
Yeah, certainly not two Pokemon you want to have out in the field at the same time as your final two Pokemon. It's tough for them to support each other too much. They do both at least have attacks, so it's perhaps not so bad as we sometimes see, but Michael's in a heck of a hole here, especially he doesn't even know Kendall's final Pokemon.
Yeah, and there is at least still, you have a good type matchup against the Urshifu in the back, and you can try to stall this out with Charm, but Kendall just gets to keep setting up the Tailwind. No risk of Trick Room from Michael's Indeedee, and Entei will be able to keep firing back Sacred Fires, and even after a Charm, still does good damage. And Indeedee and this Whimsicott both reduced to Fairy-type attacks, Special-type attacks as well. Resisted and Assault Vest boosted on the Entei. They will be taking forever to burst through there.
Yeah, Snarl Bleakwind for the rest of the game's looking pretty good, right? I just don't know how you break through this one, but Entei is going to switch out here. Perhaps would like to get its attack step back and allow its partner Fluttermane to enjoy the effects of this Tailwind.
Yep, Fluttermane is the fourth Pokemon for Kendall. If there were any doubts about whether Michael would be able to bring this back, this Fluttermane is going to be happy to tank any kind of special attacks from both of these Pokemon and is not affected by Charm whatsoever. Bleakwind Storm, though, just picking up the KO for Whimsicott, and Indeedee once more giving a round of applause to its fainted partner.
Yeah, it's trying so hard to help its friends, but they're just in a tough spot in this one. Kendall speeding things up here, wants to keep the rounds moving. We appreciate that, and just a really fantastic set by him. He's able to win that set to 2-1 and move on to a 10th win, really improving his odds of making it onto the top cut.
Absolutely. Now both Michael Zhang and Kendall Perry are at a 10-2 record heading into our 13th round of Swiss.